welcome back to another week of Behind the Lens, where we go behind the lens and below the line with those movers and shakers, those film and TV makers, the producers, the directors, the writers, the actors, the cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, sound mixers, sound editors, VFX gurus, stunt coordinators, composers, film editors, you name it, and we talk to them, and you all know how much I love to talk and to talk about film. So, I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens. And we took a little 4th of July break last Monday, but I'm back today with 2 interesting interviews talking about some impactful and entertaining films. And no, Superman is not one of them, although it could be in the future. So stay tuned for that. But today we're going to talk about the character-driven post-apocalyptic thriller 40 Acres with director R.T. Thorne, and the action thriller Off the Grid with director Johnny Martin. First up, let's take a look at R.T. Thorne's narrative feature directorial debut of 40 Acres. It's a story of, it's a bold, no-holds-barred action thriller that stars actress Danielle Deadwyler, who is amazing in this film. 40 Acres is set in a famine-decimated near future where a former soldier and her family struggle to safeguard their farm as they make one last stand against a vicious militia hell-bent on taking their land. After a plague eradicates all animal life, famine spreads across the globe, leaving society at war and in ruins. But the Freemans are surviving and thriving on their ancestral farm, so long as they dispatch the occasional raiding party. But what good is surviving the end of the world if it means snuffing out your own humanity? Deadwyler, as former soldier Haley Freeman, made that choice years ago, believing the isolation was the only way to protect her family. So she and her partner Galen fled the collapse of civilization along with their children, fenced them off from the world, and trained them to fight and kill if need be. But now, you know it's coming. You got teenagers you're trying to sequester. And Haley's eldest, Emmanuel, or Manny, as he likes to be called, is a young man, and he meets a girl. And, of course, meeting her in the forest beyond the fence where he's not supposed to go. And his need for human contact and connecting with her could place his whole family in jeopardy. So, the film it's directed by R.T. Thorne, co-written by R.T., together with Glenn Taylor and Lora Campbell, and stars Danielle Deadwyler, Kataem O'Connor, Michael Greyeyes, and Milcania Diaz-Rojas as the primary members in the Freeman family. Now, in this exclusive interview, R.T. discusses the film, emphasizing its character-driven narrative that centered on the mother-son relationship between Haley and Manny. And in terms of how that impacts the broader family story. We explore themes of survival, trust, cultural preservation, all set against a post-apocalyptic backdrop. R.T. highlights the importance of historical knowledge and cultural practices for the family's resilience, which are incorporated, many from his own life and his upbringing, incorporated into the story. The visual style, it's enhanced by cinematographer Jeremy Benning and production designer Peter Costco, and together they create a rich, immersive world. The score, it's a wonderful score. It's unexpected, especially for a post-apocalyptic film, composed by Todor Kobakov, and it just adds to the film's tension and energy. And another element that is very important here is the editing to develop the pacing of the film, to build that tension leading us to a very climactic third act with a lot of, shall we say, shocks and chills in between. And the editors are Sandy Pereira and Dev Singh. All around, this is just a wonderful film. It's a very powerful film. There are a lot of themes and issues that are being addressed and discussed here. I personally love the historical aspect. The idea of 40 acres really came out of the Civil War, when slaves were promised 40 acres and a mule. Something that the Reconstructionists then did not fulfill. So it sets us up, history sets us up, the culture sets us up for a really engaging and interesting film. And it's got working ham radios in it, so I'm happy. So without any further ado, take a listen to my exclusive interview with director and co-writer R.T. Thorne discussing 40 Acres. Hi, R.T., how are you?
How you doing?
I am very, very thrilled to be speaking with you about 40 Acres. First thing I have to compliment you on is, number one, the family name you pick as being Freeman. It definitely harkens all the way back generationally. And of course, 40 Acres and Sherman's promise of 40 acres and a mule, and how that was reneged upon by the Reconstructionists. I love when truthful history is incorporated, and you have done that here just in the mere title and character name, family name. And I hope a lot of people pick up on that, and if they need to, they can go get some history books and read. But this is an amazing film. You have so many things going on here. Number one, it's character-driven, which is fantastic. The mother-son story is the heart of this film. And this sense of family survival, and everything revolves around the land. The whole idea of this being in Canada, because a lot of people seem to forget that during the Civil War, there were not only underground railroads that went as far as Canada, but a lot of people, that's where they made their way to. You have all of this, so where did you and your co-writers start in formulating this story to bring so much together against a historical background?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, look, I think if at its core, it is a mother-son story, and of course that folds into the greater family story. But it's a mother-son story to start with. I think that I wanted to have a conversation about what the gifts and everything that my mother has given me, and how much I revere her and her efforts in helping me to move through the world and survive and learn. She was a strict disciplinarian. She was an immigrant from Trinidad, and she came to Canada and suffered a lot of discrimination and sort of had to form her armor, and wanted to pass that knowledge down to me and my brother, and she did so, and I have great reverence for that. She was somebody who was very much about learning your own history, because she said many times, I don't trust these institutions to teach you about yourself. So she had us doing book reports, and so that stuff started filtering in to the script at an early stage. I also wanted to speak about that conflict that happens in every family, that generational conflict, when, the older generation, this is how the world works. Mm-hmm. And the younger generation goes, I kind of want to do something different maybe, and that's a universal thing. So I wanted to take that sort of coming of age story, and then I'm a genre kid. I love thrillers and action and suspense and science fiction, and I wanted to project that relationship into a time where the stakes are the highest, mm-hmm. where if you don't listen to your mother, that could actually be your life, because she knows best at that time. So I wanted to put those two things together. and build the story. And then, like I said, the elements of the historical significance of things, they kind of work themselves in organically. It was tied to the fact that my mother made us do book reports and read Octavia Butler and and read about these revolutionaries from the past. So all of that stuff was, very organic with the way that this family was going to survive in the future, because the family can survive off of, military might. But this particular family, this black-based family with an indigenous component, they're going to survive in the future in a different way than the family in A Quiet Place, or the families in The Walking Dead or something. Mm-hmm. They're going to survive by relying on their history and their cultural practices. They're going to survive by knowing who they are, by learning, making sure the kids learn about that. They're going to survive by referring to, the preservation of their art, of their music, of their dance, of their agricultural practices that are passed down from previous generations. That's how they're going to survive. And that's what makes them the most resilient family in this future time. That's why all the other farms are calling them for help. Mm-hmm. Because, in that time, there's no pesticides. And you have to have, ancestral knowledge to know what different roots can treat other plants. And that comes from this ancestral knowledge. So it all became very organic to work in the history that helps this family live and survive and thrive in the future.
And that's one of the most exciting elements about this film for me as I watch it, is how, this is a lesson for everybody in today's world. You need to learn these things. We need to learn our respective histories. We need to learn the agriculture, at least some degree of it, books, culture, music. All of that is brought forth and it's encouraged. And that's something we don't see on screen today. So this sets you apart right away from other films out there and storytellers. And also your blending of the Black and Indigenous family. I don't think I have seen any project that has done that. And what each family, what each brings to the table, what the indigenous people know from hundreds and hundreds of years, their history, their culture, their practices of survival. And at its heart, this is all about survival, and the family has to survive. And you really bring that forward. It relies on trust. Trust is a big element here. How did trust work its way into this story? Because we've got a son that doesn't want to listen to his mother, doesn't really trust her, wants to feel his own oats. We have the other families. Haley doesn't trust them, doesn't trust anyone outside the circle. Trust is a big thing, and especially if we apply it to the world today.
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, the story, it originated a little bit before the pandemic. And at that time, my wife and I were thinking about having children, and, it kind of felt dark, you know what I mean? It still feels dark. It was like, what kind of a world are our children going to live in, and then when the pandemic hit, I don't know if you remember, but for the first 6 or 7 months of that, stuff felt really shaky.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, we were all like, oh my goodness, like, you can't get food at the grocery store. It's coming next Tuesday. You don't know if that's really going to happen. And as well, if we were in public spaces, we all pulled inward. We were all in our homes. But if we did go to public spaces to share spaces with people, somebody's coughing, you're looking at them sideways. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
There's a real mistrust that happened that was very much present at that time. This kind of, the fear of the other was very heightened. That stuff made the themes in the script become very real, to me, and so yes, trust, it became a major component of this story, and it's sort of like, do you circle the wagons and stay to yourself, and then the question is, how long can that last, right? Because while that may work for a period of time, there's something biological that's happening with children, and it's, that's why we kind of dropped in. Obviously, Manny is bumping up against his mother's worldview and the way she wants to work, but also even Rain is questioning, is there anybody else out there like, so that is an inevitability that's going to happen. And so if the family is to continue surviving, you can't just stay on one track. You have to be in conversation with growth and change. And ultimately, I wanted to show that the world is putting pressure on this family, as the world puts pressure on all of us. How does this family navigate that stuff? And for me, it was like showing, how they navigate, how they move through, and us being along for that ride. That was the thrilling part of it for me, as well as the thrills and the chills. But how are they going to survive through this? And I wanted to put an audience in their seats and have them kind of go along for that ride.
And you definitely do that. And this is one of the great things about your location, because your location, it allows you to control the situation in establishing your visual tonal bandwidth here. And that location is just perfect. And then you bring in Jeremy Benning as your DP. Talk to me about working with Jeremy, because the film is very cinematic. I love the color palette. The color palette's so key to the immersion and the ambiance of this world that you have created. But also just your visual grammar, because you've got so much going on in so many specific areas, such as the bunker or the Freeman house, the abandoned farms, even old rusted out school buses, the barn. And each element represents just one piece of a family's life or a person's life. And it's all beautifully envisioned with Jeremy's eye and that lens. So can you talk about this collaboration and developing this visual grammar that gives us this richly textured world?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a director that likes to shoot on location. For a story like this in particular, I thought it was vitally important. I wanted the actors, they're quite often they're kind of by themselves a lot in film, and I wanted them to understand the relationship with the land. So we had to find the right farm that was isolated, away from most any other roadways and all that kind of stuff that felt kind of hidden, and that it would take 10 minutes to walk to a certain place on the farm. I wanted that reality to be there for everybody. I'm sure my producer might not have been that happy because the time that it takes to move things around, but I think it was really important for the film. We had a wonderful production designer, Peter Costco, who did wonderful work in Women Talking, Sarah Pauli's film, and he brought a real understanding of these kind of like almost reference to contemporary life. The idea of having those buses, burnt out buses, school buses. These are not useful for anybody in that particular time now, and then they're used to house people or junk or whatever the deal. So he just had a wonderful eye in sort of looking at different things that would make reference to our contemporary world and how that's fallen apart. And then working with Jeremy was a dream. I've known Jeremy and known of Jeremy for quite some time. We came up in music video world, and I've known about him, but we never really got a chance to work together until now. And the collaboration was amazing. He really understood the themes of the film. I wanted it to be a beautiful film as well as being sort of a dark tale of survival, because I feel that, the world is actually a really beautiful place. Sometimes people make it ugly, but nature itself is beautiful, and he understood that sort of the duality of that, and we really brought a photographic eye to a lot of it. And as you said, the color palette was gorgeous, and he really, we went through lots of different sort of references to sort of come with a look that, in a lot of post-apocalyptic films, it can feel barren and empty of color, and desolate. And I wanted something different for this film. I wanted this family to feel, they're thriving. They know how to survive in this world. And so I didn't want an absence of color. I wanted you to feel that and see that within it. So yeah, it was amazing collaboration. I've worked since with Jeremy a couple of times now on some television projects.
I'm a big fan of Jeremy's work. I saw what he did on 3 episodes of Cross.
Yes, exactly.
And the diversity and the range of what he can do with light and lens. So to see it here in 40 acres on a bigger scale just thrilled me, because how much I enjoyed his work to begin with. And Peter did an amazing job with the great contrast that he gave you with production design and the set dress between the bunker and the interior of the Freeman house. You see their life. You see everything, music, art, culture, from the indigenous world and from the Freeman family. And it's all just so beautifully done. And the bunker, anybody that sticks ham radios in somewhere, I'm excited about. So I was really tickled to see that. Now, how challenging was the editing on this one? Because you do have so much going on, and as you mentioned, there's chills. There's thrills and chills here. And I was not expecting the gravity of the chills that I saw. I'm not going to give away any spoilers here, so I'm being cagey in how I say that, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So how challenging was this edit so that you could give us the stability of this family, the tenuous nature of this world, and then the shock and horror of these chills that pop up unexpectedly?
I love character-driven films in general, and especially character-driven thrillers. I love a good revenge movie. I like the John Wicks and stuff, but I also feel like sometimes that can just be stunt porn. You're just kind of watching to see what they're able to do.
Yeah.
And we're an independent film, so I'm not able to do that. But I love when I'm sucked into a character. I want to understand them, and I see the world through their eyes, and then you throw me to the wolves with the circumstances that they're in. Those are the films that I gravitate to the most. And so that was very important to me. And obviously, we took our time sort of building these characters. We introduced them in a certain way, and then by the end of the film, I want you to fall in love with them, and so, we took our time sort of building the reality of what they're experiencing, and then we kind of show them pushing against each other, so yeah, it was a challenging edit because, in the script, you kind of write all these moments, these important character moments, and then when you get to shoot them, they take on another light with these beautiful actors who embody these people, and then you get to the edit, and the film speaks to you, and that's one of the things that I learned in this process more so than any other filmic, kind of endeavor I've gone. In television, you work very fast, and you just kind of like, you edit for a week on an episode. And with this film, we took quite some time to sort of like feel it, and it speaks to you. And so I had to kill a bunch of my darlings. I had a lot more character moments for these wonderful people, but the film starts to tell you, what it needs and what it doesn't need, and you just have to be open to the process and listen. So, if God willing, we get a little Blu-ray action going on, then you might see some scenes in there.
I'd be really happy about that. And I will tell you, by the third act with Haley, it's like I'm actually yelling at the screen, no! And with the kids in the bunker, I was like cheering. They're so smart. And this just speaks to the educational foundation that Haley was insisting they all had. They were using their brains and they knew what to do.
Yes.
But
yeah.
There's one other element of this film I have to ask you about, and that is about his scoring. The score, Todor's score, is so fantastic. It's unexpected for a film of this nature in a post-apocalyptic world. So what were you looking for musically, and how did that help impact you with your editing process?
Yeah. It's interesting, when we started down the path, we were using some temp stuff, and it just wasn't feeling right, as we were navigating the thing. And, Todor was working. He was working, but I didn't have some of his material, when we started editing. But I was attracted to having moments of silence that you could hear the nature of where they were, because sometimes that can be some of the creepiest things.
Yes.
Silence can be very chilling, and then Todor coming along and having his understanding of wanting it to feel organic to the world. So he made a distinct choice to not really use a lot of modern day percussion and instruments. He wanted to create his own instruments. So he went and kind of like recorded natural sounds out in nature. He would rip bark off of trees. He would snip wires. Wow. He would take old rusted barrels and roll them. And he took those sounds and then he made those elements into percussion, and created this wonderful, strangely organic score that just brought an energy to the film, a cagey kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It was an energy with, it's kind of frantic and you're kind of nervous when you hear it. It's such a tremendous job with that, and it was exactly what the film needed. It didn't want sweeping score. It wanted this kind of energy that made you feel like you got to be on your toes, So just an incredible artist Todor is, and I hope our film score comes out for people to hear it.
I would buy it. It's beautiful. I would buy it. RT, I can't thank you enough. This has been so wonderful getting to talk with you about 40 Acres. And I can't wait to see what you bring us next.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let me I got to shout out my editors because we were talking about them, Sandy Pereira and Dev Singh. They were so instrumental in crafting this with me, and their collaboration means everything.
Dev, I think Dev is wonderful. Despite some of the films he's worked on have not done as well as I had hoped.
Yes.
Very talented editor. So you
Really?
lucked out all around here on everything with 40 Acres.
100%. The beautiful people that made this film with me. I'm indebted to Jennifer Holness, our producer, and just it was amazing. It was a blessing. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, and I hope we get to chat again in the future.
Sure, for sure.
And that was R.T. Thorne talking about, I can't talk this morning for some reason, talking about 40 Acres. And you can see 40 Acres right now in theaters nationwide. Now we're moving on to a fun interview with director Johnny Martin, talking about his new film, Off the Grid, in which he takes MacGyvering to a new level. And I got to tell you, I love the MacGyvering aspect of this film. Off the Grid is the story of Guy. He's a scientist, a man who has gone off the grid. But why? Well, he was working for a morally bankrupt company who tried to weaponize his revolutionary technology. So he goes off the grid to save, and takes his designs with him to safeguard humanity. When the company sends a strike force to find him, well, they make their biggest mistake of all. They weaponize the man they're trying to catch. And I love this tagline that that Lionsgate provided. I think it's Lionsgate. It might not be, so don't quote me on that. Armed with unrivaled brains and brawn, the wild genius turns guerrilla warfare into a deadly science. It's directed by Johnny Martin with script by Jim Agnew and stars Josh Duhamel, Greg Kinnear, Peter Stormare, Maria Elsa Camargo, and a wonderful breakout performance by Michael Zapasotsky. Now, in this exclusive conversation, Johnny breaks down Off the Grid piece by piece, starting with his desire to create an action movie without guns, focusing instead on the lead character of Guy, played by Josh, and his use of unconventional MacGyvered weapons, all of which, as you're going to hear Johnny talk about, they were handmade by Johnny and Josh to ensure that they would work within the film's construct. Approaching this with an observational nature and the importance of location as a character, Johnny goes through the casting process, particularly with Greg Kinnear and Michael Zapasotsky, the challenges of filming in Mississippi's dense forest from a character standpoint. Beautiful location, Clinton, Mississippi. It is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous location. Very, very small town. He talks about his collaboration with cinematographer David Stragmeister in developing the film's visual grammar and celebrating that small town intimacy that Clinton, Mississippi provides. He also highlights the editing process, working with editor Vincent Tabalian, who is best known for action and building tension in films like Taken 2, Transporter 2, Escape Plan 2, Hades, and Clash of the Titans. Also important to Off the Grid is the work of composer Frederick Wiedemann. By maintaining a commitment to authenticity and practical storytelling, Johnny and his team, behind the lens and in front of it, created a deeply immersive experience that makes the Off the Grid world feel very tangible and real. There's excitement, there's action, there is a lot of quiet moments as the character of Guy, being off the grid, doesn't have much human interaction, so very introspective, which helps build the tension, which is where Vincent Tabalian's editing is so important. So take a listen to director Johnny Martin as he breaks down Off the Grid and lets us in on how he and Josh made all those wonderful toys.
Let's do this.
Are we ready?
Yes, we are.
You and I are. Okay. So happy to chat with you today, Johnny.
Thank you so much for watching this movie.
I really like this movie. I was so invested in this. It's very much a pay attention movie because for a big portion of it, we don't have much dialogue. It's very observational.
Yes.
As we're watching Josh's character of Guy go about whatever it is he's doing. And this is where what I really appreciate is your location becomes a character. So we're really watching the character of the location and Guy for a big part of the first 20 minutes. And I just got so invested at that point, there's no way I was ever going to look away from the screen.
That's so great. Thank you.
How did this story even come to you? I know it was written by Jim Agnew. I'm curious how it fell into your capable hands.
Well, I called up Jim and I said, hey, I think it's time that I do an action movie. I come from the action world and everyone wants me now to do that, where I've only done thrillers mainly. And because I was always afraid to do action because of the industry that we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the time and luxury to put action to make it right. So I was hesitant, and I said, it's time that I do it. And I said, I got an idea. I said, what if I said, I just watched John Wick, and I said, I don't want that. I don't want to have an actor be able to kill 200 people and to be so highly trained that he could shoot 150 guys in the same movie. I said, I want to do something where he never has a gun in his hand, and he always uses his brain. And I want him to look sloppy enough to where he doesn't know how to fight. He knows how to get out of a fight by what he's thinking. And it's very last-minute thoughts on everything other than the contraptions that we built. And he says, I'm in. And so he started writing, and I'd go to Home Depot and start throwing stuff in my cart and going, okay, what can make a great weapon? And I bought all this stuff. I'd go home and I'd grab this fire extinguisher and pop out a hole and put a hose bib on it and then just test it slowly, see if a flame would really come out. So everything that you see in this movie was really tested. And I think at the end of the day, I called Josh up and I'd send him the idea on video, and he'd send me an idea on video, and we would start doing all these testing together. And so we kind of designed every bit of this, of all the ideas. And I thought it'd be more entertaining that if I could stay in the emotion of the character. And that's why when you say it was, that you don't see or hear a lot of dialogue in the beginning, because it was so important that I express loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
of what it would feel like to be alone, and how much pain it would cause somebody to do that, and to make sure that even if he could fall in love, he can't even talk to anyone. And that's why Maria needed to be way over the top, to where she was just so loving that you could not fall in love with her,
Mm-hmm.
where he had to push himself away with no words, just with this look in his eye. And when I read that Josh was an off-the-grid kind of guy already in his homeland in Minnesota, that we wrote the script based on him. I told Jim, I said, watch these videos of Josh. This is our actor. And I said, we write it to this man. He will. And to me, it's always important when you cast a movie, not to cast a movie that an actor has to find a way to become that actor, but try to find, habits or things the actor likes that he could relate to it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I did with everyone. It's like Greg, Greg has got his ups and downs like everyone. So why not make him a villain that he could have his ups and downs and still stay who everyone loves him with that smile on their face, but also make him feel a little dirty.
Yes, I thought your casting of Greg was perfect for that very reason. We don't get to see Greg be a bad guy. And here he walks that line of ambiguity really well for the bulk of the film. You can tell he cares. Ranish cares about Guy, but he also cares about his own wallet and his own salvation. Yeah. So how do you draw the line? Where is that line in the sand or in the forest in Mississippi? Just so well done. And you knocked it out of the park when you brought in Michael as Chase. What a breath of fresh air he is.
I had 300 people read for that role, and when I saw Michael, I only asked one to read for me again, and it was him. And I didn't even ask him to read for me. I said, I just need an hour on the phone with you, not 10 minutes. I need an hour. I need us to get bored together and to find out what our conversation would be like an hour into our talk. And I said, once I see who you truly are, and I'd ask him quick questions, about himself, and ask him about, his, what he does on his side, and, and his hobbies and all this stuff. And we were laughing and roaring. I go, this is the character. I said, you need to feel like you're 14 again. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, I'm 20. 22. And I said, no, you're not. I said, you're 14. I said, also shave that little bit of hair you have on your chest. I said, and shave your arms. We need to make you feel like you're 14 again. The audience needs to know what a small town feels like. And, everyone pictures small town people that have an accent. And when you're in where we shot in the South, I said, no accents. I said, I don't want to be people to be typecasted as who they are. I just want to feel characters. And that's where Michael, I think, really brought this wholesomeness. And he was the only one that could get the guy character to actually talk. Because it drove someone that was so kind and that you felt that he was in his own pain with his dad, that he needed Guy. And Guy wanted someone to talk to, and he trusted this kid, and that's where he helps bring Maria into the movie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Michael, just as Chase, such an endearing character, and to watch the relationship develop between Guy and Chase, that has such a natural, easy flow to it, Johnny. You let it breathe and you let it grow. And it really rises on the fact that Chase is so innocent, very naive, very sheltered. And he's just so wide-eyed and so eager to engage with somebody else who is also typically very quiet and doesn't have friends. So I love how you let that grow, because that really becomes a sustaining factor in this storyline as we see where you take this story. But just really well done with the casting. And of course, Peter. You gotta have Peter as a bad guy. Got to.
Well, we had to. I wouldn't cast that role, and they wanted me to cast him, and they sent me tons of guys. I wouldn't even look at the videos, unfortunately, to all the people that read. I'm sorry. I said, because Peter I've known for a while. I've been attached to a few movies to direct with him. That I begged Peter, and he'd say, "No, I'm sorry. He kept apologizing. I'd call him 2 weeks later. He goes, "What?" I go, "Please, I'm begging you, please, just come in for 1 day. 1 day is all I need. Just please." And he goes, "All right, I'll be there." He goes, "Can you get me out in a day?" And I go, "Yes." And so when he got there, and he goes, "Well, let's see all the." He goes, "You got a lot of dialogue." I said, "No." I go, "Greg, come in here." And Greg and him would sit down. I go, "Guys, we know what we have to say." I go, "Let's improv this thing. Let's just have fun and really go crazy. I'm going to roll the camera for 10 minutes. Let's just go off on the same kind of storyline to get what we need out of this thing, to find the best balance that we can. And Greg, be you, and Peter, be you." And they were really, truly who they truly are together. And they were ripping each other. I wish I could share the outtakes of those.
Wow. Well, that means we've got to have a director's cut or a DVD Blu-ray with extras.
Sure hope so.
So much of this is shot in the forest, in the wooded area, there in Mississippi. This presents a logistic problem on its own, with lighting, with camera. Luckily, I'd say 90% of it is natural lighting that your cinematographers are using there. But talk to me about designing the visual grammar and how that location and the terrain affected the visual grammar and the look.
Well, it's funny because this movie was set to go to Italy, and we were ready for it. And I found a forest, because Forrest was the star. It was number 4 on the call sheet to me. That Forrest was the star. So I found a certain forest. All forests would not work. Then all of a sudden we get moved to Spain, and I struggled to find the right forestry in Spain because the trees were very thin and they were too spread out. And I found a part of forestry there. Then Then they said, "No, you got to go to Mississippi now." So I get to Mississippi, and believe it or not, that whole forest scene you see is maybe all of probably it's less than an eighth of a mile of a square block in there, that I found a structure that I really liked, with a creek, with levels, mountains, which Mississippi is usually flat, where I needed some rises and everything. And I needed it to be crowded, but not too dense, because I didn't want the forest to overtake the audience's dialogue, because once you have beauty around you, you all of a sudden now are looking at the beauty and forgetting what the actors are saying. So I needed to make sure that the shadows were perfect right. So it's like 3D. You know, Josh pops out from the forestry, and the forestry isn't equal with Josh, and we had to change Josh constantly as the sun moved and cheated, where we knew that it was all equal in that sense. And just to tell you about the forestry, it was so crazy that we had 4 snake wranglers, because throughout every shot, snakes were flying everywhere. And then we had ticks. We had chiggers. I got 2 chiggers in the stomach, and my body swelled up like a balloon. I was getting shots of steroids every day to walk.
Oh, my God.
And it was a hard shoot, because it was 110 degrees. And we had snakes going everywhere, and people would jump from the set, and because in the background we'd hear guys screaming in the middle of a take because there would be a snake going past their legs. So and I made sure to stay in the dense forest with these guys. We never walked away from each other, and we just battled it out. And I think we got a really great balance where the forest doesn't overtake it, but yet you see, you know, the actual beauty of Mississippi, because Mississippi is really, really a beautiful state. It really is. Just stay away from the snakes.
Yeah, I've been through Mississippi before, and I've been all over the South, and it truly is. There are some beautiful, beautiful areas of Mississippi, and that's why this one, I think you shot in the Clinton area, is really nice.
What a great little town.
I mean,
what an amazing.
Now, that small town, that town is so perfect. Did you have to build that up? Was all of that existing there? Did you use with what you had? Or did your production designer, did Adam have to come in and with a crew and start building?
Well, Adam is my hero to begin with. I mean, what he did in this movie, I wish people could really appreciate it. Like, the store was not a store. It was just an open room. And he built that store. The bar was an actual pizza place, but it wasn't a bar. And he built that whole bar.
Wow.
Everything he did was just genius. But Clinton is only like a 2-block town. And everyone's giving me the locations of hell or high water, kind of look dry and dreary. And I'm like, believe it or not, small towns can be beautiful too. And when they showed me this brick street area of Clinton that was only a T-shaped town, I'm like, this is what, and if I had to leave the country or run away and be off the grid, I sure in the hell wouldn't pick a desert town. I'd pick somewhere where I could at least feel at home. And that was very important to me, that everywhere you feel like when you go to Josh's cabin, it needs to feel like home. You know, it needs to feel a presence of how he could put up with being alone every single day. You know, maybe his surroundings reminded him of his dad or whatever, and that's what we related it to, was his past life. And we do that with all actors. We set up a structure of how they were when they were kids in this character, and all the way through, and we try to develop the set design around their memories. Like Josh's memory of what he thought the character was is in that cabin, believe it or not.
Wow. All of that, it's just fantastic. And the small town feel that you get, the purity, and that's one of the great things. You get a purity in the town so that when it gets infiltrated, you get a striking balance of evil coming in. The bad guys really come across as evil, and just so well constructed, Johnny. So well constructed.
Thank you so much.
Got to ask you about how challenging was the edit here, because your edit, you build so much tension here, because first you build inquisitiveness as we're trying to find out who Guy is and where we are and why is he out there in the woods, in the forest. And then it becomes as little pieces as we cut back and forth with Ranish and Belcour. Little pieces start, that there is, something lurking, and tension starts building, and you keep building and building and building. So talk to me about working with your editor on this one and putting this together. How challenging was the edit to find that balance and do that tense build?
Well, I think that Vincent, who's an amazing editor, and I thought he was going to get mad at me a bunch of times, because we finally did the rough cut, and he says, well, and I said, it's not right. There's something not right. And he goes, what? I go, I got to go. And I went and I drove for 3 hours, and I go, what was not right? I was so disappointed. I was so depressed because it just wasn't what I had in my mind. And I came home to my girl, and I said, I don't know what's wrong. And finally I went back to Vince. I said, I think I got an idea. And we moved scenes that were at the end of the movie to the middle of the movie, scenes that were at the beginning, and brought them to the end. And I moved like 8 scenes around, because once you shoot a movie, you realize that the emotion of the actors are what drives the story string.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden, if you have Greg being mean in this scene, and then he's likable in this scene, and the kid being kind but being scared, and then also being kind again, well, in the script it worked. But when you edit the movie together, the emotions need to follow each other. And so all of a sudden I found Mikey being happy when he got threatened by Greg. It's like, no, we got to move that scene in front of this scene. And so we were constantly switching scenes, and there was a lot of issues doing that as well. And then when I finally got the movie where I'm like, this will entertain the audience. I know it will. I know it'll be nonstop now. I go, but something's missing. And it took me and Vincent, I think, 3.5 weeks to figure out what was missing. And what was missing was that my movie started off, like you were saying, with very little dialogue, to really no loneliness. I go, there's a slow build to this movie. I go, we need a ticking clock to happen in this movie. I go, let me take a piece of an action moment where you don't know what happens and put it at the beginning. Now all of a sudden, my movie doesn't start in a slow way to where you're developing. It starts as a ticking clock. And by doing that one little brief moment at the beginning of my movie, now changed the whole feeling of the beginning of the movie. And that's when we felt like, okay, now we have the movie that I want to show the audience.
Mm-hmm. Now, hand in hand with that, at what point did you bring in your composer? At what point did you bring in Frederick and have him work on a score? Because when you're moving your visual imagery that much, going back and forth, I can't imagine that you already had him scoring at that point, because everything would have had to have been shuffled.
All right, another guy that wanted to kill me, Freddie. Freddie has been on every one of my movies. I've been very loyal to him on everything I do, and I will not use anyone else.
He's fantastic.
Freddie understands me. Yeah, he is amazing. He works with every genre. But what's great about him, he knows that I'm crazy, and he knows that if I overthink something, that I'll go in for a major breakdown and change. And that's what happened, is that Freddie comes in on every one of my movies in pre-production. He comes in at pre-production. We start talking about it. Then when I get the rough cut, he does a complete score on it for me. Because when we deliver a movie to the studio, we have to make sure that they understand what story we're telling through the music as well, through the score. And so then we delivered it. They loved it. Lionsgate loved the movie and said, great. And then all of a sudden, I started watching the movie like probably 30 times, and I call Freddie up and I go, buddy, we need to erase everything. I said, I want to start all over. And he's, are you kidding me? I go, yeah, it's from the beginning. He goes, why? I go, the score is beautiful, but it's too strong. It's equal to the dialogue and equal to the movement of the characters. I said, I want it to be eerie and subtle underneath them, where you're not sure you hear it, but your brain hears it, but not your ears hear it so much. And I said, if we could do that throughout, and bury it a little bit more, but make it more, kind of a moving motion. I said, that's when we got it. And he did it. He went from beginning to end and recreated. He's done this movie 3 times. And I think what he pulled off in this last bit was unbelievable. It really told the story I wanted.
I really like the score that he did, Johnny. It fits the film so well. And it has that kind of mysterious, deep South, Gothic South undertone to it, which works well for the mystery that's unfolding. Because it's a mystery that we have unfolding here for a good part of the film. As to why is Guy hiding? What is he doing? Why does he never shower? All of these fun things. So
he stays in the pond.
That's it. That's why you had to have a location with a creek and a pond.
I did. I used that creek as a barrier. And everyone said, well, Johnny, he's too wide open. I go, no, that's his barrier. That's his moat that he has that no one can get through to him.
I loved watching this so much, Johnny. Job so well done. So I have to ask you, do you have a favorite moment in this film of which you're most proud?
Yeah, it's something the trailer didn't show, and that would be that we got to show the gadgets that me and Josh worked for 2 years on to build the best gadgets that we possibly could. Those were all built by us, you know, and we tested them all, and the trailer didn't show what a genius he truly is. And when we got to pay that off at the monastery and to show the audience what they were, that's why when we showed the beginning of the making of it, you know, you have to pay that off. And that was probably the funnest scene, to finally get to the point of paying these things off.
You took MacGyvering something to a new level, let me tell you.
That's terrific. I love this interview. Thank you.
So well done, Johnny. I can't wait to see what you bring us next.
Well, hopefully it might be off the grid part 2.
I would love to see Off the Grid Part 2.
Already written. We're ready to go.
I would love to see that. Johnny, thank you so much. This has been so fun getting to talk with you about Off the Grid, and I hope we get to do it again in the future.
I do too. Thank you for enjoying this movie.
Thank you, Johnny. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was director Johnny Martin talking about Off the Grid, which you can see in theaters, on demand, and on digital right now. And as beautiful as this film looks, in showcasing the forested and wooded areas, on the big screen, magnificent, but it's also the kind of film that you want to just curl up on the couch, turn off all the lights, and watch in the dark. It is thoroughly enjoyable, and quite frankly, I'm looking for Off the Grid too. So, there you have it. 40 Acres and Off the Grid. Check them both out. That is all the time we have today. But make sure to check out BehindTheLensOnline.net for more on these interviews and so many more interviews. And I've got some reviews that are actually going to be popping up this week. So, until next week, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.